What is up, guys? Welcome to another video, and today we are here for some more Need for Speed Tokyo Nights. So since the first video, this has kind of blew up more than I expected it to. You guys have really loved the idea and warmed to the idea of Tokyo Nights, and lots of other content creators have actually made videos about this, which I encourage. I can't urge you guys enough to make videos about this subject because this will help Ghost. Ever since the first video, you guys have been making a bunch of, like cover arts and a bunch of like loading screens and stuff, so I'm going to link a few of those into the description. And there's obviously been a bit of confusion about what Tokyo Nights is, so I just want to clear that up before we get into today's subject. Need for Speed Tokyo Nights is my vision for a perfect Need for Speed game. It seems like a lot of people are getting hung up on the location, but that's not the kind of main thing about this series. It's like kind of frameworking the whole game, so we can give this to Ghost and be like, Ghost, this is the game we want. It's not just the location, and I know a lot of people are getting confused about that. I can imagine a lot of people came from the menu concept, so they didn't see the first video, and that's completely understandable. And we're gonna talk more about the gameplay in this video, and today we're gonna go ahead and talk about the modes. Modes are important to any game, but more specifically racing games. With racing games and how open and broad there are, and there's so many things you can do with them. You can take them in so many different and exciting ways, and since this is what you're actually going to be playing, as long as the gameplay holds up, which we'll talk about in a different video, the modes have to be interesting. One of my main problems with Forza Horizon is the fact that it's just races and just infected, and that's it. And with how broad Need for Speed is, there's so many different directions they can take it. We're going to discuss a few of those today. So we're going to split this video up into two parts: the single player modes and the multiplayer modes. There needs to be a distinct difference between the two. Obviously there's going to be some carrying over, so circuit and sprint races will carry over into both, but there's just some multiplayer exclusive modes I feel that shouldn't really be in the single player, so we're going to go ahead and talk about that now. So we're going to go ahead and get the kind of obvious ones out of the way with. So drag races are here to stay, drift racing's here to stay, circuit races are here to stay, and sprint races are also here to stay. Those are kind of the four basic ones of like that should be in any racing game, to be honest. I mean, drag racing is kind of one of those ones that can be taken out, but with Need for Speed and with how they've gone around the whole drag customization and stuff, that needs to stay a thing. And those four will carry over between online multiplayer and single player. Now there's more specific things and more kind of intricate things we're going to talk about in a minute, because obviously there's multiple drift modes and multiple circuit modes you can have, and we're going to talk about that now. So firstly, the first kind of alternative circuit mode I want to see come back is lap knockout. It's been so long since I've done a lap knockout, a proper lap knockout in a game, where you have like 4 laps, there's four or 5 races or whatever, and you eliminate each racer as the lap continues. It's been so long since I've played that type of game mode. I want to see it come back. I'm desperate to see it come back. It adds so much more tension to races, and I can imagine online, especially if you're playing with friends, that can get really intense. As long as the physics are obviously sorted out and then it's not a complete ram fest, or if there's non-contact mode. But again, we're going to talk about that kind of stuff in a different video. I think lap knockout would be a great addition to Need for Speed. It's so far, I've actually made a video on it previously, a full feature-length video on it, and I can't imagine it would be awfully hard to, to program and stuff as well, because it's just a circuit race, surely, where you get rid of the person in last place and put them into a spectate mode. I can imagine the spectate mode would take quite a while to make, but everything else surely wouldn't take too long. The second variation of one of the modes that we've already talked about is in sprint races. I want to see Speed Trap come back. I can't even remember the last time we saw Speed Trap in a Need for Speed game. Possibly Pro Street, maybe Undercover. Did Undercover have it? I'm not sure. It's been a while, pretty much. I don't really know why it went. Again, it's so much more strategic doing a speed trap to a normal sprint race. Do you use your NOS, during the speed trap sections, or do you see if you can get a big enough lead to get to the front and, not really worry about the speed traps as much, and instead worry about, getting that lead, so maybe the opponents might have a penalty on them and you might win that way. There's so many ways you can play around that. Again, it would be really fun in online multiplayer. I'd love to see speed traps come back, and I don't really know why it ever left. And again, with sprint races, you can also do kind of like a sprint knockout if you really wanted to, so similar to how the crew does it, where like it's every minute or so someone gets eliminated. That would be really cool. And these are modes which could be both in the single player and the multiplayer aspect of the game. So next we're going to go ahead and move on to drift races, and this is where things can kind of get a bit muddled, because like there's so many different variations of it. The normal drift trial needs to stay. So if you don't know what a drift trial is, essentially you have a track, you drift around it, you get points, and that is it. That needs to stay in the game. It's kind of the basic drift mode, which is kind of like in every Need for Speed game that has a drift mode. But on top of that, you know, in previous games, we've had Toge, we've had Gymkhana, now with Need for Speed Payback, we've got Speed X, or Street X, whatever it's called. You know, there's a few things that I would like to see change. I think a Toge mode would be cool, but I don't want to see it in the drift section. Instead, I'd like to see the Need for Speed Carbon approach in a sprint race. Toge is mountain racing. That is what the word means, I believe. I might be wrong on that. So, you know, I get like Toge and drifting. It's like kind of just like synonymous with both, but I would like to see it go back to its roots of original canyon racing, with maybe you have like an outrun type bar, so you have points and stuff, how Carbon did it. I don't really want to see it in the drift section anymore, just because it doesn't really make sense for what it is, and I think it'd be a lot more interesting if that was a race type. One thing which could be really cool for an impromptu race is, say you're in a specific section of the map, and there's a corner and you're there with your friend online. This might be an online only mode, but I can imagine you could probably do this with the AI as well. So, you know, you come up to a section and you see a really nice, like, sweeping corner, and you wonder who can get the most points during that corner. Now, obviously, I'm not sure how the game development would work for, you know, identifying each section, but it would be really cool to kind of get into, like, the outrun type scenario, so where you press a button and you press drift challenge, and you see how many points you can get during one section. I'm pretty sure that Need for Speed 2015 had a similar idea to that in, you know, the outrun options, and it'd be really cool to see that come back, especially with online friends. I think that'd be a lot more fun with friends, you know, seeing, you know, you kind of like drifting in the mountains, and then you see, oh, I reckon I can beat you in that corner. That'd be a really cool idea. Drifting needs to stay simple. I feel like, especially in 2015, it was overly complicated, and in Payback, it's been overly dumbed down. There needs to be kind of a middle ground, and modes like this, I think, would help that a lot. Next, we're going to go ahead and talk about drag racing. I don't ever want to see an actual race in a drag car ever again. Drag racing needs to stick to drag racing, and it needs to be in straight lines. I don't understand. It's like every drag race in Need for Speed Payback is like not in a straight line. I just want to see a drag race in a straight line. I'm an easy person to please, so yeah, just a drag race in a straight line with NOS, with one bar of NOS that you can't reuse. That would be really cool. Maybe do it with the car system upgrade, so maybe you have 3 bars maximum, but once you've used that bar, you can't use it again. I think Payback did a very good job of that, and I want to see that kind of continue. And then obviously with everything I've just said, with all those modes, you can kind of mix and match, so you can have a speed trap knockout. So let's say if you have the slowest time going into the second speed trap, you're eliminated, and it carries on going till everyone's eliminated in the race. There's things where you can mix and match them, but for the basic modes, those are what I'd want to see in both single player and multiplayer, just because. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about multiplayer, because this is where things get a bit more interesting. I don't ever want to see the option to be a cop in a Need for Speed game unless it's in a cops and robbers mode. You've got 2 dens, you've got the cops den and the robbers den. You've got money in the middle. The job for the robbers is to collect that money back to their den, and the job for the cops is to stop the robbers, you know, getting the money back to their den. It's a simple premise, but with how Need for Speed is, it would be such a cool idea, you know, just to see a Crown Vic versus an RX-7, or then you could go up to a Corvette, to, let's say, a Dodge Viper, and then you could go up one more to maybe a Koenigsegg, to a, I don't know, an Aventador. I wouldn't want to see hypercars in this game, but you get what I mean. The general premise is there, that you could have both cars on both sides, and it could be a really fun multiplayer mode. I played a lot of this in Need for Speed Undercover, and I really enjoyed the mode. It was really, really fun. And again, I don't know why it wasn't a thing in Need for Speed The Run. I can only assume it was because they didn't have the open world. A mode that I'd want to see back. I had so much fun on it. It makes sense. It's Need for Speed. You know, police and racers are both, you know, it just makes sense. Infected, King, you know, classic Forza Horizon modes. I want to see it in Need for Speed again. It would just have a perfect place. You could also put the twist on it, so if you got infected, you turned into a cop, maybe, and that could be the way that the kind of Need for Speed twist is taken on things. Just basic modes like that we've seen in many of the games, I think also have a place. Like, obviously the crew has Crowned, and then, you know, Forza has King and Infected. Those party modes would also be really cool to see. I guess you could probably have this in single player and multiplayer, but pink slips and wages are a thing which need to be a thing in the next game. I will link a video down in the description that I've made regarding Need for Speed 2017 and pink slips, and you guys can go ahead and watch that if you want further explanation. But I think that would be a really cool feature for the game. Even if pink slips, you know, can't make it, I think wages at the very least would be really cool. And it'd be really cool to, like, that would open up such a big kind of loophole for videos and stuff and creation, and, you know, even like a marketplace. You know, you could give away credits and stuff through this mode. It offers a big kind of loophole for a lot of things. You know, if I wanted to give away like a perfectly tuned RSR, it would be a perfect way to do that through the wages mode. Or let's say I just wanted to give a friend a car that I have. That would be a really great thing of doing it. And obviously there's no garage limitation anymore, so that would be the perfect thing to do that in. Alternatively, there could be an auction house, but again, we're going to talk about that in a different video. Today is purely about game modes. And finally, kind of the last new addition, which I'd love to see in a Need for Speed game, is car meets. I think the idea of rolling up to a Tokyo car park and, you know, having that kind of first scene from Fast and Furious, seeing everyone's cars lined up and being able to meet new players and being able to mess around with the photo mode in that area, I think that would be really, really cool. I haven't really discussed on any other modes other than racing modes and race types and game types, but obviously video modes and stuff would be really cool as well, and I'm going to talk about that in a different video. But like having a Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift-esque car park where cars are flashing neon and stuff are all lined up, that would be really cool to me. And you could even have it so far as be an actual race area, so maybe, you know, in real life players are lined up with their own cars and you're racing or drifting in a car park. That could be really cool. So many ways you can take it, and if you want a social space for Need for Speed, that is the best way of doing it, because Need for Speed nowadays is a social game. That's what kept 2015 alive, and it's clear to me that that does need to have a kind of specific focus going into the next game, especially with its multiplayer, and I think this would be a great way of doing so. And that pretty much rounds it up for the modes. I think I'm probably going to think of more modes, you know, as I go along, but those are kind of the basic ones. Speed Trap and Lap Knockout are the two major ones which I want to see come back, because I feel like I'm just getting bored of just doing circuit races in games nowadays. Anyway, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to go ahead and hit the like, subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one. You guys have been awesome. Stay safe and peace.